What is up, everybody? Welcome back to 9 to 5 Gamers, and today we are reviewing every game that IV Studios has come out with. Now, Brink hasn't come out yet, so if you're watching this in the future, just know I have not yet played Brink because it is not out yet. But IV Studios was super kind to go ahead and send me a copy of each of their games with some of their expansions, and I'm going to go through each of these. And as you know, when we do our reviews, we go through our little 5-step process to talk about each of the things about each of the games. And so I'm going to just do this as fast as I possibly can and then give you my scores at the end. Now, as a quick reminder about each game, I'm just going to go over a quick overview of each one so you can understand what kind of games they are and if it's maybe something that's up your alleys. First game up on my list is Mythic Mischief. Mythic Mischief is a 1 to 4 player game. It is a head-to-head game, so it'll be a 2v2 if you're playing with 4. But that 1v1 is where it's at, really. But basically, it's just kind of like a strategy, abstract game where you play as a faction of high schoolers that are monsters and different monster factions that are trying to get... They're kind of messing around in the library, and they're trying to get the other team caught by the Tome Keeper. Every time you do that, you score a point, and whoever gets the 10 points wins the game. Very fun, very fast, very easy. Great game. Next game is a game called Moonrakers. Moonrakers is a contract fulfillment deck building game where you guys are working together and a lot of times working against each other. It is not cooperative, it's competitive because whoever gets the 10 points first wins, but it's cooperative in the sense that sometimes you need to work together to fulfill some of the contracts. And this game is partial negotiation where you're divvying up the rewards for each mission you're trying to accomplish and working together with people and sometimes sabotaging people. It is a fun game and I really like Moonrakers. The next game is Fractured Sky. Fractured Sky is kind of like a hidden movement, not hidden movement, but hidden information game. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to do some area control, but the ships have these little magnets on the bottom of them if you have the deluxe version. And these little magnets have numbers, and whoever has the highest number wins the territory where that ship is at. And you're trying to build little markets and things like that to gain control and gain resources, and you're spending those resources to build more little ships and little fortresses and things like that. But the cool part is you don't know what the person has placed, and there's some mind games that come with that, but for the most part it's an area control game, but it's also got some hidden information, and there's like these decks of cards that you don't know what's under them. Really fun game. And last but not least, it's Veiled Fate. Veiled Fate is definitely a hidden role game where you're trying to have like a social deduction game where everybody's playing as a demigod and you don't know which demigod everybody is playing as, and there's about 9 of them on the table, and so you're not 100% sure which one's which. If you're playing at a 5-player count, that's 5 of them that are in the game, 4 of them are not in the game, but you're moving around each of the pieces to make them score or lose points, and you're trying to just get yours to gain points while trying to keep it a secret from everybody. It's a really fun social deduction game, but it's all about whoever gets the most points in the end. It's a very fun game like Veiled Fate. Now let's talk about each of these games and talk about basically how they set up and the storage and stuff. All of these games come with amazing storage systems. I don't think any of them has a bad storage. I think they all store very well, but the setup is very easy for the vast majority of all of these games. I think that Fractured Sky probably has the most setup. Veiled Fate sets up very easily. I think Moonrakers that kind of has a little bit of a setup, but it's not as bad as Fractured Sky. Fractured Sky has by far the most complex setup, just assembling those little player boards and things like that. So if anything, Fractured Sky is going to take a little bit of a hit for setup just because it's a lot of setup for a game that isn't super long, but I think all of them set up relatively easy and they all have beautiful storage solutions. Everything fits in the game box perfectly. Moonrakers, you always want to make sure that you have it down because sometimes the stuff will slide out and it's a lot of cards, some metal coins, and when you put it upright like I just did, all that stuff just goes flying everywhere and it can be very difficult. So with that said, I think that all of them have a pretty good storage and setup time. Now, what about the learn and the teach? The cool thing that I like about IV Studios games is that all of their games are very easy to learn and teach people. They're not complicated at all. Although the games have a level of complexity to them, most of these games are very easy to learn and teach. And their rules overhead isn't too bad. They have really good rule books, and those rule books are awesome for learning how to play the game. Lots of examples, lots of illustrations. They're not overly done. If I was gonna grade each one, I think by far the easiest one to learn is probably gonna be Fractured Sky, Veiled Fate is a little bit more nuanced and complex. I think it's probably with Moonrakers a little bit more on the difficult end. The easiest though is definitely Mythic Mischief. Mythic Mischief is so simple and so easy, but as you advance through it and add more factions, learning how to play the game becomes a little bit difficult because they are asymmetric. So, but all of them are pretty easy to learn. You're not looking at a very complex or difficult game. I think they're all more on the easier end to learn how to play them, and teaching them is very simple as well. Most people get them pretty quickly, and you can get through a teach of this in like maybe 5 to 10 minutes for each of these games. Some of them might be a little less or a little bit more, but they're really not that complex. Now let's talk about the component quality and the just overall artwork and things that go into this game. Let me tell you something. If there's anything these games excel in and what they get perfect scores in, is their component quality. Ivy Studios knows how to make a board game. Like, these games are gorgeous and beautiful on the inside. Everything from the box art, all the artwork is beautiful, but not just that, the components are high quality. I mean, the base game of Moonrakers comes with metal coins. Most games don't even do that. And although I can sing the praises of these games and say, wow, these games are so well produced, unfortunately they come at a hefty price. I mean, for the Fractured Sky Deluxe, edition with the magnets and the painted minis, you're looking at a price tag of almost $200 for that. The Titan edition of Moonrakers is about $200 as well. Even Veiled Fate, when you open up the box, there's not a ton of stuff in it, but what's in it is about maybe $70 to $80 or something like that. Very, very expensive games. I think Mythic Mischief is a little bit more on the affordable end, but there's not as much stuff in those. Plus, you have to buy all of the separate content. So if you're buying all of the different expansions, it could be a pretty hefty price as well, but it's a little bit more on the cheap end. But I'll tell you what, man, some of this stuff can be worth the price for some people. It just depends where you're at financially. I know all of us are struggling at this point in time because this review is going up as of August 2024, September 2024. And yeah, so it could be quite the cost for them, but they are very beautiful games. So it is kind of like hit and miss with that. I think it just depends on the person and what they like to do, but these games are very well produced. I will give them all that. Very beautiful. The minis, everything that they come with is really well produced and very nice. Gameplay mechanics is probably going to be on the longer end, but this is something I wanted to talk about with each of them. And so when it comes down to the very first one we talked about is Mythic Mischief, 2-player game. Very easy to learn. It's just an abstract strategy game. Feels very chess-like, and you're moving pieces around. But I think the cooler part of this is mostly the interaction you have with the other players, because you can make walls, and at the end of the turn, the Tome Keeper is going to move towards the nearest objective. So you got to kind of create these avenues for that the little Tome Keeper to go down a certain path so that they could run into the other characters. You can toss characters around, push them to the other side of the map, just to make sure that they're in the path of the Tome Keeper as he passes into that area. Very, very strategic, very thinky, very fun. I really like the gameplay and the mechanics of this. I also like the little tableau, not the little tableau. I really like the little player boards that they have where you can kind of like increase the stats of things you can do. It's like, hey, look, you can do this more often by collecting these tomes and using them to boost your stats each round. Really, really nice. I really like the gameplay of Mythic Mischief. Fantastic. I have nothing bad to say really about it. The next game is going to be Moonrakers. Moonrakers is a lot of fun. Like, gameplay wise, the mechanics are, again, it's a deck builder, and you're building up the deck by buying certain ship parts that add cards to your deck. But the cards that are in your deck are very simple cards that just have simple abilities. Like, it feels very Dominion-y. So if you've ever played Dominion, you're right on board with Moonrakers, because it's the very same style where you only have one action, but you can play a certain card that gives you +2 actions. And then some of your ship parts, when you upgrade your ship, allow you to get more actions, and then you can play thrusters, which let you draw more cards to cycle through your deck. There are crew members who let you do other things. By far, this is the game that I've played the most of, and I can say with all of the expansions and the content that's added, especially with the Overload expansion, woof, man, the deck building is so fun. The contract negotiation where you're saying, hey, look, I think between the 4 of us we can do this, and a lot of people are just like, listen, I don't got anything for you, I can't help you out. Oh, I'll help you you out. I think the two of us can do it. And then that person's like, all right, I'm going to play this. And then that plays this. And then it lets me do this. And you guys play your hand out to try to fulfill a contract together and then divvy up the rewards. It's super good. I love the mechanics behind that game. I love the contract fulfillment. I love the negotiations. I like working with the people at the table, but then people are like, don't work with him because he's going to get a bunch of points. And you have like these sneaky little objectives that give you hidden points. And when you fulfill those objectives, you can flip them over and gain your points. So it's like, hey, look, let's do this contract together. I'll give you guys the points. I just need the coins because I want to buy a ship part. And then everybody's like, sure, let's do it. And then all of a sudden we all go to do it. And then I go, I'm not going to play any cards, or I'm just going to play this one card. They're like, how come you didn't play any cards? What are you doing? And it's like, because I had a secret objective that said fail a mission involving everybody at the table, and that gives me a victory point, and now I have 10 and I win the game. I actually won a game like that, and everybody felt so betrayed and so angry, but they were like, that was a good play, Jeremy. Dude, Moonrakers is phenomenal. I love the gameplay of it. Fractured Sky is the next one, and Fractured Sky, wow, what a beautiful game. The little magnets, I'm not sure how the retail copy of this plays because I think it just has like little cardboard chits that you use, but man, I really love the hidden information where you're placing out the things, and I think the coolest mechanic on it is that all of the magnets are like, have little like a black edge, but there are two magnets that have a white edge, and it's the numbers, and they all have like a number printed on them. This one has a number 0, the other one has a number 10 for the white ones, and so when somebody place out a white chip, you can see the white border, but you don't know if it's a 0 or a 10. So they either have all in on that zone, or they are using the 0 piece to bluff and make you think that they chose the 10, and then they're going to divvy up the other 2 ships because you only have 3 ships that you're placing. The gameplay is very simple. I think that some parts of it are kind of weird. Like I don't like the little ships, but I guess maybe I'm missing out on that, and I just need to actually try to use these more often. But they have these little ships that you can build with I forgot how much it costs. It's like wood and stone or whatever, and you build these little ships that add +1 to an area where you have like your ship at to, you know, possibly win territories. But the thing I don't like about them is that when you build them, they get removed from the map after the round is over. So it's like you're kind of wasting those resources, and it just kind of feels bad. So that's the only part I don't really like about it. I do like the hidden information, and there's like a little thing where it says if you go, like if you have 3 numbers that you're placing out, if they go over 10, then you have to subtract. So it's got a little math there, which is kind of it's fine. But I just like the game, and I just don't know after playing with that deluxe copy if I would ever want to play the retail copy of it. In the comment section, let me know if you've played the retail version, if you feel like it's fine. If somebody's played both of them, let me know what's the difference. But for the most part, this deluxe version is expensive, but it's very pretty, very nice. The table presence on this game is incredible. But that is Fractured Sky. And then Veiled Fate, mechanically, is such an interesting game because, and the thing is, it's a bit swingy. I say that mechanically, that's the thing you have to watch out for, is that you don't really know what's going to happen because it's all fate. It's all designed around the idea of fate. There is the feathers side and the scorpion side, right? And so you're just placing these little figures onto these quests, and then at the end, once all of the figures are placed on a particular quest, everybody votes when they place one of their figures on there, and you put a card face down onto this pile, and then you guys vote on which side of that quest is going to win. And I don't know, man, it could be kind of difficult because it's kind of like, well, depending on how everybody votes, and then there's cards that will just add extra cards in, and sometimes that throws the vote off, and you don't know if you're going to score points. Keeping who you are a secret can be kind of tough, but for the most part, the game plays very smoothly. It's very easy, like taking your turn, you get 2 actions, you do your 2 actions, and you're done. And you pass it off to the next player, and then everybody takes kind of their turn. Gameplay-wise, I think it's very fun. I like the hidden roll, hidden information, that you're just trying to do that. There's a lot of luck involved with some coin flips and different things like that. So if you're not into games that can swing based upon the luck of how many cards are placed in there, or also just maybe even a coin flip can mess you up in the game, there's like little global objectives that happen at the end of each game that everybody votes on. I think it's a solid game, but I don't think this game is for everybody. I don't think everybody will like this game. I think this one's a little more niche than the others, but that's the basic gist of all of the gameplay. I think they all play really, really fun, but I definitely clearly have my favorites. Now, last but not least, let's talk about fun factor and replayability. Starting with Mythic Mischief, a lot of replayability here, lots of different factions you can buy. There's a whole season 2 of the game coming out with even more factions that you can play. I think the replayability of this game is phenomenal, and I think the game is very fun. Very fun. Super awesome game. I think that everybody who likes abstract strategy games is going to love something like this. If you like Onitama, if you like games where it's just like a 1v1, I love the one-on-one version of this game. The 2v2 is cool. I think it's fine. I think it works well. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I still do like it very much. And I think it's a fantastic game, and it plays in a good amount of time, but sometimes it could take a bit long for what it is, and I think that if you can mitigate that somehow, you should, because it can take a little bit. But let's talk about Moonrakers. Moonrakers, fun factor is through the roof on this game. There's a lot of great things that you can do if you like contract fulfillment, negotiation games where you guys are working together with people on the table, but also backstabbing those same people. You're looking for a fun night of yelling and screaming at each other. I think Moonrakers is the game for you. I think it's very fun, and I think it's very replayable with a lot of the extra content. Only thing I didn't like about Moonrakers is that I felt like I don't think all of the expansions were hits. I think some of them were like okay. My favorite being Overload. I think that that's essential. I think everybody should get that one. I think some of the other ones are just kind of like take it or leave it, to be honest with you, but I think Overload is probably the best one because it adds new cards to the game that make the game a lot more fun, plus extra mechanics and things like that. But I think with all of the expansions and trying them out makes the game very replayable. But I think just base game alone is the replay value for me personally is very high. Again, that's not objective, that's subjective. So if you don't like this game, obviously you're not going to want to play it. I absolutely love the game, so I love playing it, and I play it a lot. Fractured Sky, amazing game, very fun. Replayability, I think for this one's on the lower end because there is no expansions for this one. There's no asymmetry in the game, which I thought would have probably brought the game up a little bit for me, because that's the thing. It's like everybody plays as a different faction, but everybody does the same stuff. And after a while, it's just kind of like samey of what you can kind of do. It's like every game is somewhat different, but most of it's kind of the same and feels a bit repetitive. I wish there was some more like asymmetric, like this faction does this and you get extra bonus of this or something like that to help the game, push the game into a more replayability. I do know that they came out with like an expansion, I think called Rift Force or something like that, that's coming out, which I pre-ordered to get a copy of that, or I backed it on Kickstarter, and that's cool. But we'll see how that helps with the replayability once that comes out. But for the most part, I feel like the replayability of this one's not as good as the others. I think the fun factor is good. I think it's a fun game. I think it's a beautiful game. It's very attractive, very easy to teach. I think people like the game. I just don't know if it's the most replayable out of all of them. And Veiled Fate has a ton of replayability for me. Maybe not as much as Moonraker, but definitely more than Fractured Sky, because you are playing as the same demigods and there's no extra stuff with that. But when you play the game, there's another variant of the game where you play with more people than 5, where you're playing like 6 to 8 players, and in that case you're split up into teams of 2 and you don't really know who your partner is. And so there's some interesting ways to play the game, and there's some different quests, a lot of different quest cards, a lot of different age cards and hidden objectives, and it really kind of adds a little bit of replayability. And it's just one of those games that I think people would enjoy playing again and again and again. I feel like it's very replayable. So overall, let's talk about what my scores are. Coming in at the bottom of the barrel, I have Mythic Mischief. Me and my wife like it fine, but again, I'm not the biggest fan of like 2-player games. I think the 2-player version of this shines and plays very well, but I'm not sure that it's the best of the lot. I think it's probably on the lower end, and I have it at about a 7.5. I feel like it's a good game. I feel like it's a great game, actually. I don't feel myself being drawn back to it personally. I'm just not a big fan of abstract games. I think they're good, and I think that if you like abstract, you'll love this game, and it'll probably be higher ranked for you, but for me, it's on the lower end at a 7.5. The next game that I have ranked is going to be Veiled Fate, and Veiled Fate is at an 8 right now, but I feel that as I've played it more, it's beginning to rise to like maybe an 8.5, but Veiled Fate is definitely one that's fun, but it's very long. We played it at a game night recently, and we played with a good group of people, and we played with about 5-6 people, and it was good, but it felt like it took the whole game night to just play that one game, and then everybody kind of just left after that because it was the only thing we could play that night. It takes a very long time to play, especially if you have people who are really trying to think about what they're doing and their moves, and they don't process things quickly. If you have people who are AP prone, it can really drag this game out. But I have this game at an 8 because I really enjoyed like the hidden roll about it, and it's becoming more and more replayable for me. I think I had this one lower than Mythic Mischief before, but as playing it more, I've really enjoyed it more than Mythic Mischief, so I have this one at ranked as at an 8. Next up is going to be Fractured Sky, which I have at an 8.5, just because of how beautiful this game is. I love the magnet thing. I love the area control. I love area control games personally, and just not knowing what people are putting out. And also they got these cards where it'll literally tell you where the points are, these little starfall that you're chasing after, and you can like peek at those cards by paying resources for those and giving away little bits of information. I love the little puzzle of trying to figure out where everything is. I think this game is pretty replayable. That's the only thing I didn't enjoy about this game, is that the more that I play it, the more that it's starting to sink lower, which is why I have it at an 8.5, but I think eventually it might sink down to maybe an 8 because I just don't have that replayability. But when Rift Force comes out, maybe it might change my mind on that. But I really do like Fractured Sky. It's an 8.5 in my book. Beautifully produced, very easy to learn. I think it checks off a lot of good boxes, just not the replayability, and that's where it takes a little bit of a hit. And last but not least, I've got Moonrakers. Moonrakers is coming in at a 9, and it's only going up from there. If you add the Overload expansions and some of the other expansions, we're at like a 9.5. This is almost a perfect game for me, and so this is one of those games that's going to get that golden seal and golden lunchbox, and so I'm just overjoyed with this game. I think this game is fantastic, and I really, really enjoy Moonrakers. Moonrakers is by far my favorite Ivy Studios game. We'll see when Brink comes out, but right now, out of all of the games that I've played, I cannot stop playing Moonrakers. I want to play it over and over again. I love the deck building. I love the contract fulfillment. I love that eventually when your deck becomes strong enough and you have your cards and you can hit some pretty crazy combos of putting your cards out, you can honestly take on some of the tougher ones by yourself. And I love the danger die and the mitigation and the shielding and all the things you have to do, the ship parts, the upgrades, hiring the crew. I love this game. This is my favorite. Like, honestly, it's becoming one of my favorite games in my whole collection. I would not be surprised that this makes top 10 by the end of the year, but we'll see. Maybe there are other games that are gonna take over. But that's my review of all of Ivy Studios. Hopefully this didn't take too long, but if it did, thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Love you guys so much. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite Ivy Studios game is. Leave it in the comment section. See you guys later. Peace out. Toodles. Why'd I say toodles?